I do really like this one, and it's ideal for the build that I've started now. And yes, you're going to say, oh my God, you haven't, have you? And I have. I've started a new build. I'm a big fan of the sound of this locomotive. However, it is a little bit grating after a while. Welcome back to the Toolbox, where I share some of the best mods and assets I use in Transport Fever 2. And yeah, this is another build. This is something I started about a week ago in my own time. I even labeled it private build. It was just going to be for me, but I've ended up doing a cab ride on it. I'm sorry, but here it is. Somebody mentioned in a comment somewhere, have you made York Station? And I haven't, but I kind of have on this build, or it gave me the idea to make one on this build. So this was kind of the feeling for this build. I've basically redone what we would call our massive terminal station. I always like to build a big terminal station, and I've taken sort of the inspiration from the stream build and tried to improve on it and make the junctions a little bit cleaner. And I've tried to add a few more local services or start the railways for them. We're not talking about the build, but I thought I'd give you an introduction to it. What I did at the end of this sort of cab ride is a version of York. And I kind of, how can I put it? The way I was thinking is I was always kind of a little bit bored of doing I always lean on the West Coast Mainline for the inspiration of my builds, especially sort of coming out of terminal stations. And I always sort of implement a lot of the things I like from that and then maybe use something from, I don't know, another railway line or another station. I always end up doing a massive version of or a mixed version of St Pancras and London Euston or something like that, and always do the same sort of junctions coming out, which I kind of have done here, but mixed them up like I did with the stream build. And then I always end up doing a simple version of Watford Junction or a slightly souped up version. And when somebody mentioned York, I had to look at it on Google Maps and then opened up Open Rail and had a look, and I thought, you know what, that would work instead of Watford Junction on a line like this. And that's what gave me sort of, I guess, little things like that always make me go, what else can I do in this game? So what I did is I've started building a version of York. It's not got the same platforms because I had to build it with the London style connections in mind, if that makes sense. I liked the approach and I liked the bypass line that you can see, and I liked the exit as well, where it's split off in two directions, which gave me a little bit more scope for different train services coming out as well. So I've started doing that. It's really early days. There's nothing around it. It's kind of the station, a few of the lines. I've started thinking about where I want some of the freight terminals there as well, but it's really early days, and we're only going to arrive on it when we get to the cab ride anyway. So this is the British Rail Class 86, and when I read it off the mod, it's version 2. I'm not sure if I ever downloaded version 1 or I have both. Just double check that. I'll put a link to this mod in the description below. It doesn't say it requires it, and apparently they work in tandem with each other, so it's absolutely fine. This mod is from CW315, and some of the liveries, I believe, are from Funk Life. We have a full range of liveries, including Intercity and Intercity APT Experimental, Virgin Trains, and a really good range of British Rail blue liveries. And of course we have our freight options, rail freight distribution, parcel sector, and Freightliner. Now I particularly like Freightliner, with the 86 mod having a top speed of 100 miles per hour. If you select the Freightliner, it's been lowered to 75 miles per hour, but it does have a little bit more power, which of course is ideal for freight loads. One thing I was surprised at, and I'm not sure if this is a direct real life relation, the rail freight distribution has had its speed lowered, but I didn't notice any difference in its power distribution. And of course, being CW315, the interior detail is fantastic. As I said in the intro, the audio for these locomotives is really, really good. However, when sitting in a cab ride or doing something for a while, I have found it a little bit grating. They do have a slight whine to them, and they're quite high pitched, and they're very, very loud. I'm not sure if this is something since the last patch, but they're really loud compared to most locomotives I use. The British Rail Class 86 were originally built back in the 1960s. 100 locomotives were built between 1965 and 1966. They were deployed on the then newly electrified West Coast Mainline. The West Coast Mainline connects London Euston to Birmingham, Crewe, Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow and Preston. Something I learned when I was reading up on the 86, as I tend to do once I find a mod, is it was the train that allowed British Rail to replace almost all of the older steam locomotives. And by the end of 1968, all steam had pretty much evaporated from the West Coast Mainline. Enjoy the cab ride. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.